So our journey at Hermannsburg and with positive education has been a really exciting one, and it started in January after a lengthy discussion between myself and Trevor Harbottle, the principal of Hermannsburg School, where we had tried to unpack exactly what we thought a bespoke program at Hermannsburg could look like and how we could benefit both the students and the staff in terms of their well-being practice and social emotional learning, etc. So we decided to do a year-long program where, as a positive psychology practitioner, I would come in and run staff training. We had a setup day at the start of the year where we introduced the idea of positive education and positive psychology. We decided we were going to do Martin Seligman's PERMA model, and we then, obviously, with the addition of the vitality piece at the end. So using Seligman's PERMA-V model, we then came in, set up this program that was going to run for 10 months, 1 month, one day a month, where I would come in and run staff training specifically around a specific area. Introduction to start, then looking at each of the pathways to flourishing in the PERMA-V model. And in addition to that, then running a handful of workshops which focus specifically on strengths, on resilience, and on meaning. Now, obviously, our best laid plan, as we all know, at the end of March, we were hit by the lockdown, which was pretty much worldwide. In South Africa, it was at the end of March, which meant that we had to really reassess where we were going with our program. It gave us an opportunity to focus specifically on areas within the POS-Ed model, in the PERMA-V model, that we felt would be beneficial when it came to us assisting our students online. And we changed things, and the staff were excellent. We ran all our sessions over Zoom, which, as we all know, has become a fairly normal thing for most of us. And we then, as time went on through the lockdown, we then looked at how we could build a return to school protocol. So we sat down. Trevor and his team were excellent in the way that they looked ahead and looked at how potentially the work that we were doing could help the students and the staff return when the lockdown was ended and we were going back into face-to-face teaching. That program is going to be discussed. So although our workshop today, or our seminar presentation today for this wonderful conference, is going to be about positive education, we specifically, as a school and as intrinsic education, would like to focus on how beneficial being a positive education school has been in terms of preparing us for returning to school and returning to face-to-face learning. I have no doubt that there are going to be little pieces, little nuggets of knowledge that you will be able to take out of this, and then you will hopefully be able to use in your schools as we navigate these really, really strange times. So I hope you enjoy our presentation. We certainly have enjoyed the positive education. It has been wonderful working with Trevor and his team at Hermannsburg. The children have been fantastic. We've been running a number of student programs as well, and you'll hear a little bit about those in this presentation. Enjoy. First of all, tell us a little bit about tell us about Hermannsburg School. Let's start there, and then we take it from there.
So in Hermannsburg School is quite a small school, which makes us quite unique and agile in terms of being able to introduce sort of positive education, a socio-emotional support thing, because we're looking at, in the high school, 78 scholars, 16 teachers. If I look at the whole school, from the preschool, our quadruple R's, all the way through to grade 12, I've got 170 children, and I've got 40 academic and admin staff. So it's very small. Our biggest class in any grade in the school is 22 children, and some of our classes are only 5 children. Wow. So it is a very personal, very caring school, just because of those size aspects. You really know everybody. There's no place for any child to hide.
Tell me how you came across positive education and why that was so appealing to you as the head of a school.
I remember talking to you a little bit at the conference about how we could take some of what we'd learned at the conference and look at then introducing it into Hermannsburg as a a whole school model and as a tool that we could develop, and a sort of very contextual board moving in the same direction, rather than just a few of us who felt really engaged in this, but know that it was something that was embedded in the school.
Then do you want to elaborate a little bit on exactly where the journey then took you and what you have done so far? Because of course that will lead very nicely into us talking about the work that you're doing at the moment around trying to prepare your school for when we come back out of lockdown.
No, so I think that for us, the starting point was we needed to get all of the staff in the school to understand what is positive education and why do we see benefit in it. So I did a bit of a staff development with my staff at the beginning of the year to introduce that, and we made our theme as a staff for this year, Live Well, Learn Well, based on the sort of well-being aspects that come out of positive education. And at the same time, in our conversations, we decided we would use the PERMA model that Martin Seligman had developed, and we would sort of look at how we could make that real for our school and for what our teachers are dealing with.
So to give you a little bit of a background as to exactly what we ran in terms of our framework for positive education at Hermannsburg School, as I said earlier in this presentation, we focused on the PERMA-V model, based on Seligman's PERMA model with the addition of the vitality piece. And we ran workshops once a month, for half-day workshops for all faculty, who would then come in, focus on a specific area, and then use the next month of teaching to embed that in their practice. Number of programs that the teachers had to follow, and a little bit of homework and feeding back as to how these things were working. We also then had the resilience, the meaning, and the strengths workshops that we ran as separate ones to make out the 10 month, once a month staff training that we use then in the month to embed. So as those of you who are aware, and most of you who are watching these presentations will know what the PERMA-V model is, with P being for positive emotions, and we looked specifically at how we could build that and align the emotional responses to the school's value system, and you'll hear a little bit about that in the seminar. The engagement, we spoke very much about the idea of understanding as teachers where a person's zone of proximal development is, and we spoke about, and we worked on flow. Under relationships, critical time, COVID hit us as we were doing this relationships piece, and it spoke very much to what we were trying to achieve during our online teaching program, the relationships piece. And Trevor, actually, as the principal of the school, came up with this connection over content as a rallying cry. Meaning, obviously, a very important pathway to flourishing, achievement and accomplishment, and we unpacked what does that look like now when we return to school. How do we set our goals? How do we reflect on accomplishment, knowing that the year is very different to what it had been, remembering that the Southern Hemisphere timeframes is a January to December academic year, and we came back to face-to-face teaching in May, and that meant that there was still quite a chunk of the year, but of course we had a big disruption. So the meaning piece of what is accomplishment going to look like for the rest of this year, and then obviously the vitality, ensuring that we are still, despite the fact that our students are not able to take part in organized sport, how are we ensuring that our children remain physically active? How do we ensure that they are cognitively maintaining their well-being? And then obviously the sleep and nutrition conversations that were ongoing.
So what we did is we're fortunate to have a chaplain on our staff. And so the chaplain, myself, we then involved you, and I happen to know a social worker up in Johannesburg with a master's and a background in trauma and grief and anxiety. So we asked her to consult us as well.
The coronavirus pandemic has caused such a collective trauma that it's left hardly anybody unaffected. Most of us will surely come out on the other side of this with some scars. And these scars could be debilitating were it not for the Psychosocial COVID support program which we ran here at our Hermannsburg school. With this positive psychology inspired program, we've given our staff and our scholars the opportunity to turn this trauma into opportunities for growth, something which I believe we will all be grateful for in the years to come. In so many ways, I've been able to use what we've learned through this positive psychology program, especially the PERMA-V model, to help us in so many ways in the classroom, for me as a chaplain, in my counseling, and in many other areas where we looked at the meaning of our lives and where we can find meaning despite the trauma and the hard times that we are going through. Something that I'm very, very grateful for.
So my favorite part about positive education is understanding the relationship we have with others. Ever since this COVID-19 thing, people have been stressed and people kind of worst has been coming out. Positive education helps us to hone that and understand why we react the way we do, and helps us to understand why others react the way they do, so that we can help them and help each other.
For me personally, it was understanding myself, understanding my strength, my weaknesses, where I can grow, but not only myself, but the relationships with others, how to support them, how to understand them, and how to just be there for them and care for them in a way they need to be cared for.
And knowing my signature strengths will help me plan for the future and know what I'll be able to do to live a fulfilling life and to fulfill my purpose.
So one of the interesting things for me is it's all about growth and about promoting growth and promoting a positive dialogue between you and yourself, most importantly, and between you and other people. That you can have a positive dialogue about the things you are feeling, important thought processes, and the way in which minds develop.
Hi, my name is Mobile Sitole, and I believe that the best thing about the COVID Reentry program was the fact that it was there. It gave a lot of reassurance that the school understood that things were different. It showed us that there was a support system for us there, especially since this whole change of events brought with it a lot of emotional strain. So it was very comforting to know that we were supported and cared for.
Hello, my name is Anande Makobane, and the COVID-19 reentry program that our school had set up for us when we came back to school helped me in such a way that it provided some form of reassurance that things will, in the end, be okay. They may not be okay right now, but they'll eventually be okay. I also learned that it's very important to choose to see the good, even in the situation that we're in right now. I also took away a very useful skill, which was the breathing technique, the 7-11. And that really helped me a lot, especially since I'm the type of person who stresses very easily. It really did help me a lot.
The Reentry COVID-19 program was a great way to start term 2, as it helped us to get a better understanding of what was happening with our body due to all the stress. It also made us realize that we weren't the only ones feeling this way. So it made us understand why our friends were behaving the way they were. It also made us realize that there is hope. There is a way to get up on that upward spiral instead of just going down, down, down. It made us realize that there's a lot of beauty around us and we can do it. We're not alone and there's a lot out there to keep us going. It was really a great way to get a better understanding of this new life we were living.
Going into the Hermannsburg Reentry program, I felt confident that I could deal with my own challenges, that I could come to terms with my own fears by myself. But what the program was invaluable for was contextualizing the pandemic for me. It helped me relate to the other people in my class, helping me understand that while it's a divisive pandemic, it causes people to be apart, it's a universal experience. We all shared the same fears, the same sorrows, the same denials. And that was pretty powerful, learning how to understand and come to terms with that. And the very fact that the reentry program existed gave me a feeling of security. The school was taking the scholars' mental health very seriously. It was a visual representation of this, an understanding that we were cared for, that the problem wasn't being brushed under the carpet. And that alone went a long way to make me feel safe and comfortable in the new normal.
And then the first 2 days of our, when we are back at school, we've set aside the first 3 hours of each morning for us to have small group discussions around what children have experienced while they've been on shutdown, what their thoughts have been about it, what emotions that they've been through. We've got a few of the staff who are more emotionally attuned to that and who will sort of guide those. And we're also looking at getting in a couple of experts from outside who can provide more intensive counseling and support where we pick up larger problems than we as teachers are able to deal with.
To support our anxious scholars and help them find hope despite the COVID times we are living in, we immediately focused on 5 sessions after they returned from hard lockdown. Here is a short summary. On the first day in the first session, we focused on acknowledgement, asking them how the virus affected them, asking them to tell us their story, to share with us their losses and gains, loss of possessions and events and maybe even persons, and what was positive during this time. We looked at what a grieving process can look like and ended with a focus on the positive and encouraging them to still make good memories despite the difficult times we live in. The second session focused on our neuroscience response, basically our neurobiological response to intense emotional experiences like this collective trauma that we've been through. How we sometimes fight or flee or even freeze during these times. This session was all about understanding our response to stress and anxiety and grief and trauma. We looked at connecting our feelings to the experiences we had and where these feelings happen in our body. We specifically looked at Dan Siegel's brain response to traumatic events and discovered that it was important to calm the body before we can calm the mind. And we explored different techniques to do this. The third session on the second day was all about growth. How have we responded to the virus? How have you grown because of this experience? And so we looked at the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset and discovered ways in which we can grow despite the traumatic events in our lives. Again, it was a focus on being positive and positive memories, being grateful, and celebrating life were 3 important takeaways from this session. 3 things that can help us grow. The 4th session on day 2 was all about learned helplessness and learned optimism. We asked each other, where do you feel helpless? And what can you start taking responsibility for in your life? And how can we create a more optimistic outlook for ourselves? We looked at Martin Seligman's theory of learned helplessness and how we often fall into this through traumatic events. We explored the differences between optimists and pessimists and how they lead their lives. We looked at the positive upward spiral and the negative downward spiral, and how we can discover wedges to place into the downward spiral to prevent us from falling even deeper. And these wedges were summarized through the PERMA-V model: positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, accomplishments, and vitality. We delve deeper into these six areas. We delved deeper into these 6 areas and discovered a lot of value in them. And the last session, and the one that underpins this whole program, and one that we will focus on in the weeks and months to come, was the session of hope. We looked at definitions of hope and explored what it is that gives each one of us hope. Because our school is a Christian school, we obviously discover hope through our spirituality. We set up our chapel with different stations to help our scholars become more concrete after the previous 4 sessions that we went through in the classroom. All of this to help them become more resilient and to discover what it is that gives them hope.
We've emphasized in the discussions with the staff that I've had that I want to see connection over content. And for me, my feeling is that with this lockdown, our scholars need to know that the teachers care about them, that the relationships are intact. And if they return to school and the relational bonds between staff members and scholars have actually been deepened, I think we'll be able to catch up any content gaps that have emerged. But if they return to school and there is a breakdown in the relationship between staff and scholars, and the focus is entirely on, we've got a lot of pressure, we've got to catch up on academics, I think I'll end up with a very frustrated staff and scholar sort of mix, and probably achieve less in the time that we make available than if we take a little bit of time out to deal with that emotional thing and to prioritize that relationship.
So ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed having a little sneak peek into Hermannsburg School and their positive education program. In particular, how they have used POSED as a wonderful vehicle to ensure that their return to school protocols, their return to school after COVID, when they went back into face-to-face teaching, was one where well-being and flourishing of both the staff and the students was held up as the most important piece, and how our journey so far has really proven that positive education has a significant role to play, not just under our times now with COVID, but actually has a significant role to play in ensuring that our children have this social emotional literacy, this well-being literacy that we know is going to be critical for them as they move beyond school into their lives. So we hope you've enjoyed this. It has been wonderful presenting to you at this conference. Thank you.